Today, we're diving into a topic that touches so many families: cancer caregiving. It's a journey that can feel overwhelming, isolating, and emotionally exhausting. But it's also one filled with opportunities for deep connection and community. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. Hi, Dr. Lakelyn here. Welcome to Caregiver Chats. I'm a gerontologist and caregiving advocate for Home Instead, an Honor company. I'm so glad you're taking the time to join me. These conversations are a space for learning, reflection, and support. And I invite you to subscribe to Caregiver Chats on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, I love hearing from you. You can email me anytime at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. My guest today is Sheri Biller, a passionate advocate, philanthropist, and co-founder of the Sheri and Les Biller Family Foundation. Sheri and her husband Les created their foundation in 2001 with the goal of transforming lives through active, deeply engaged philanthropy. One of their focus areas is supportive care for serious illnesses like cancer. This focus has led to incredible work, including the Biller Family Resource Center at City of Hope and last year's launch of the Together for Supportive Cancer Care Coalition. Sheri brings a unique perspective to this conversation. She's not only a leader and changemaker, but also someone who deeply understands what cancer caregiving requires, both emotionally and practically. In today's episode, we'll talk about what supportive care really means, why caregivers so often feel invisible, and what we can do to better care for the people who are caring for others through cancer. Sheri will also share her heartfelt advice for caregivers in the thick of it and who continue to show up each and every day. Hi, Sheri. Welcome to Caregiver Chats. I'm so excited to have you with me today.
Thank you for having me, Lakelyn. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Me too. Well, I thought it'd be great for you to share a little bit about your background and kind of what drew you to focus so deeply on caregiving and specifically supportive care.
To try and make this short as possible, and also I think that all your listeners probably can relate to this story because they probably have a similar story. But when I was in my 30s, my two best friends were diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow.
It was very traumatic for me in that I'm an only child. So when you're an only child, your girlfriends are your family. And these
Yeah.
two girls were my sisters. And unfortunately, they both passed. But during their journey, one of them, who was a very wealthy girl from Minnesota, the other one was a girl from Los Angeles whose parents were both physicians, very, very successful physicians in Los Angeles. And both families literally fell apart. There were
Wow.
mental health issues. It was a long time ago. There were mental health issues. There were all kinds of issues that happened within the family that caused just total devastation. And I didn't realize it then, but of course that I probably was the first caregiver. I don't think I understood at that time what that meant. I mean, I was so
Yeah.
young, but I was trying to support both of these families, including the fact that one of the children committed suicide because the family stopped talking to him. And so I, at a certain point, said to my husband at that time that if we ever had any resources, we were going to try very hard to figure out how to make this better for everybody else.
Wow, Sheri, what, as you said it, traumatic experience, especially so early in life, and to lose two friends at such a young age and to watch the devastating impact and the kind of the ripple effect that it had on the families. I'm so sorry for your loss of both of those individuals. And it sounds like you did get to the point where you and Les found the resources to start your foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about how the foundation came to be? And I'm sure these experiences that you mentioned really helped to shape that.
The foundation started when Les retired from his career. And we decided that since we had a limited amount of resources, the only fair way we were going to do this was to do it with each of us get two of our biggest things that we were concerned about that we could focus on. And my two were theater, musical theater particularly, and figuring out how to deal with supportive care in the United States. And because of that, I started researching the major cancer centers in America to see if anybody was doing the work of supportive care, who was supporting families, who was supporting more than the patients, and how they were supporting them. And it took a very long time. It took well over a year. I traveled pretty much all over the United States and found City of Hope at that time. And City of Hope was already in their DNA dealing with supporting patients and families and caregivers. It was a match made in heaven. And so that's how it started. That's how my part of the foundation became focused. And we did that for 25 years. And now the foundation is primarily focused on this issue and getting it to work in the United States pretty much for everybody.
Wow, that is a labor of love to do all of that research and to find the needs and the gaps in care. And you've used the term supportive care a few times, so I think it'd be helpful to maybe kind of give us a definition of what that is. I know often it's discussed within like the cancer and chronic disease community. But, many people have not heard of it. I think the reality is 2 out of 3 patients haven't heard of it. So there really is that knowledge gap that caregivers have. And as you mentioned in your journey, not everyone identifies as a caregiver. So they might also not know about the term supportive care because of that reason as well. So could you just kind of help to explain what it is, and maybe in particular in the context of cancer care?
When I speak to supportive care, I am talking about all services a patient and their loved one might need outside of their clinical care. So that would be pain management. It would be a dietary service. It might mean transportation. It certainly means mental health issues. It certainly means helping the caregivers. It certainly means anything that you can do to help with community resources. And it should be part of the care of the patient because what we're trying to do is allow the patient to focus on getting well.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like those wraparound services. Of
Mhm.
course, when you think of receiving cancer treatment, you automatically think about all the medical components. But to your point, there's so much more. And I know from the work you've done, this supportive care model really does help to kind of improve the outcomes for the patient and their families. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and maybe the benefits not only to the patients, but also to the family and the caregivers?
I think probably a little bit of it is intuitive. I think when you're the patient, um, you are immediately worried about the people around you, people who
Mm,
love you. So part of this is giving the supportive care services, giving the patient the freedom to focus, knowing that the people around them are having the resources they need to be able to help them. Um,
mhm.
and so that's pretty much what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about that particular issue.
Yeah, I think that you're right. We underestimate sometimes the person that's at the center of care, the care recipient or the patient. They're often, you know, maybe carrying a little bit of burden that they don't want to be a burden on others, or they want to make sure that the people that are supporting them are also well cared for. So I really like this model of supportive care, especially when it comes to cancer, because I know in talking with you as we prepared for this call, we discussed how caregivers, I mean, of all types, but especially in kind of the cancer caregiving space, that there's a lot of isolation that a caregiver might feel. And so as they care for a loved one with cancer, can you talk a little bit about that isolation and what it might feel like for someone who's supporting a loved one or a family member with cancer?
I think, and as you mentioned, we're talking about cancer, but I think that your listeners probably realize that this is any life-threatening disease.
True.
Anyone who's a caregiver taking care of anybody today is facing these issues. But the biggest issue I can feel and I relate to is the fact that people immediately feel alone. They feel like they're alone out there doing this by themselves. And with that, there is the issues of depression that comes along with that. And
Yeah.
so we are trying to make sure that people know they are not alone and that there really are resources for them. What they don't know, because they don't know the word supportive care, is they don't know to ask for them. They don't know to ask
Yeah.
for help and how important that really is.
Yeah. And I think, too, so often in the healthcare system, there's so much focus on the patient that the caregiver feels a little bit invisible. But a lot of times we refer to the caregiver as the second patient because their health and well-being is just as important as the person that's receiving the care, because without them, they might not have that support at home that they need. So, do you have any thoughts there as to why caregivers might feel overlooked in the healthcare system, or any kind of tips on how to advocate for themselves?
Um, it's such an important thing that people realize that it's okay to have self-care and it's
Yeah.
okay to be overwhelmed and it's okay to ask for help. And also for people to understand there really is help out there and that you don't need to be doing this alone. And if the caregiver isn't okay, it comes back to the patient not being okay and the
Yeah.
surrounding family not being okay. And so that isolation and depression is such a huge issue. It's such a huge issue. And most people don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. I mean, they don't know where to go for help.
Yeah.
So very first thing I always tell people is wherever the patient is getting care, that's your first voice to say, I need some help. Can you help me with?
Yeah, with blank. Yeah, and you're right. And I think we are very used to, in many of these types of situations, be interacting with the healthcare system. So it seems natural to go there first for kind of help and support. So if a caregiver is feeling kind of that isolation or depression or overwhelming feeling, I think it's very important to express at your loved one or care recipient's next doctor's appointment, express your concerns as well and what you need, and bring up that term supportive care. I think we're giving people a new term to use.
To use.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that we're overlooking another important word, which is the word guilt, because a lot of patients also feel guilty for getting sick. And then the caregivers feel guilty because they don't feel that they're doing a good enough job or that they're needing to get away or they're needing some space.
Yeah.
So that other word, guilt, is a very important word that we wanted to make sure we should try and take away from any caregiver who's facing this journey.
Oh, that is such a good point. Guilt comes up on this podcast over and over in the context of pretty much every type of caregiving we've discussed. So I am not surprised that you brought that word up today. And I think you're right. And caregivers are often, they're giving so much of themselves, and especially in the context of cancer care, there can be a lot of intense treatment and maybe personal care or physical elements of the care, and not to mention the emotional elements of the care too. And so, getting to burnout, that's the last thing we want caregivers to do. So, reaching out for help, getting connected, and
we're trying
reaching
to
out to these
empower them.
services. Yeah,
We're trying
exactly.
to empower them, right? We're trying to help them
Yeah.
know that they really have a power, that they actually have the ability to help themselves and help whoever they're caring for.
Absolutely.
By
Well,
using this tool, right? By using supportive care.
absolutely. Well, and I think too, if caregivers can find community support groups, peer groups, that also can help caregivers feel less alone. It can help combat that isolation and loneliness. So, Sheri, in the work that you do, what are some of the benefits, or how can people get connected to some of these support or peer groups?
Um, I think that logically, the first thing I always think of is using your faith group if you're a person
Mm,
of faith, because there are so many communities that have people who are willing to help you, to give you time. If somebody needs to go out and do some shopping, be a driver to take somebody's child to school. I mean,
yeah,
there's so many people who are facing what we're discussing, that they understand what a helping hand is. There's also some fabulous organizations online that can give answers. It's American Cancer Society, for one. I mean,
yeah,
there's so many tools on their website that people can use to help with finding answers on how to uh, how questions around nutrition, just anything that comes up. They're really excellent at it. Um, the cancer support community is another online resource that is really, really excellent. Crossroads for Hope is another one that's wonderful. So I think that people don't think about using the net as much as they can, because right now, as a tool, it's incredibly important, because our doctors are stressed to the max. We don't
yeah.
have enough. There aren't enough nurses in the world to help us with this issue. Um, so we have to find the other ways to be able to go about this. And there are other ways. I mean, there are people out there who are willing to help.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to link to those organizations that you just mentioned, Sheri, in our show notes, so
Oh,
that
wonderful.
people can get connected. And online, I think it is so neat to see how those connections can be formed. And a lot of support groups or peer groups are very accessible, online at all hours of day and night. And some kind of meet in more of a kind of formal Zoom setting. Some kind of have maybe a Facebook group where you can, chime in whenever it's convenient for you to ask questions. Or as you mentioned, these organizations have, resources on their site that you can go to. And so I am glad that you brought up those various organizations and how they're providing support. Um, and and I know that, as a caregiver goes through the journey of caring and supporting for their loved ones, sometimes they're just so in the thick of it. There's, the intense treatment schedules. They're on this kind of emotional roller coaster. Maybe they've had to make some really hard decisions. So, Sheri, just from your experience and then the work that you've done, do you have any maybe thoughts or advice on ways caregivers can make it through these really hard times, take time for themselves, care for themselves as they kind of are in the thick of their caregiving journey?
Um, the it becomes so overwhelming for everybody when you're thinking about uh, medication dispensing, and
Yeah.
thinking about being there for appointments, and being up late at night if somebody's in pain. The endless checklist that a caregiver has to worry about. And I always think about having that other person that you could have as a helper, a
Mm,
friend, whoever, somebody who could come and take a night so that you could have a night's sleep. I mean, without sleep, we can't function.
yeah.
So I always think about all of the little benefits that somebody can help somebody else with, including even going to an appointment and listening. I worry
Yeah.
about what the patient doesn't hear. So the caregiver is the one that really is there taking notes or paying attention to what the doctor's saying. Sometimes it's really good to have someone who isn't intimately involved listening,
Mm,
because when they're listening or writing, they're usually saying it in a way that isn't giving the information back to you that isn't tainted. Because when you're
that's a
emotionally
great point.
involved, there are some things you don't want to hear. You don't
Yeah.
want to hear. So, I think about all of these little kinds of help, and somebody to watch the children one day, somebody, just to be able to take a break, get a massage.
Yeah. Those little breaks, we call that respite, time
The
away from the
respites, right,
caregiving role.
right.
Yeah, and at home instead, I remember when I used to work in the local franchise, and we cared for a number of individuals that were receiving cancer treatment. So whether it's a family member or a friend or a professional that can come in and help with some of that to give the primary caregiver that much needed time away, it's so beneficial. And you're right. It's those very small acts, like, maybe making a meal or giving a ride, or sometimes just simply sitting with the person so that, you have peace of mind that someone's there while you step away. Those can all be such great elements of your support system. And you do kind of have to, as a caregiver, build out that support system and maybe think outside the box a little bit sometimes as to who you can reach out to. Like you mentioned, your faith community or, these various organizations. And so,
And also,
yeah,
you just think about some of the societal little challenges, even right now, where we're in the period of back to school for most children. And
yes.
I'm thinking about the parents who might have a child who has cancer, where back to school
Mm,
isn't isn't happening for them, and
right.
how that affects them emotionally. And I worry that that just the reaching out, it's usually to a family member, but sometimes that's a burden for the parents as well. So to find those other resources is a really critical piece, that I really urge everybody to do.
Yeah, that is a great point. Various times throughout the calendar year, there can be times that maybe are more challenging for families. Back to school, and whether your child has cancer or you're that sandwich generation, and so you're trying to get your kids ready for back to school while also maybe caring for a parent with a cancer diagnosis, just feeling kind of the stress and strain, and we're, I can't believe it, but headed into holidays soon, and family just, there's a lot that goes on that time of year, and there can be a lot of emotions. And so I think that also, along with that word guilt, there needs to be a lot of grace. Caregivers need to give themselves a lot of grace to feel those emotions, to seek the help and support that they need too, and that supportive care, for both, again, the patient and the caregiver. Um,
That's such good advice.
yeah. Yeah. And Sheri, as you have worked with so many caregivers over the years, is there anything that you wish that every cancer caregiver knew before the start of their caregiving journey? I know hindsight's always 2020, and a lot of times people aren't ever planning to be a cancer caregiver, maybe unless it runs in the family. So sometimes people are just kind of thrust into this after they get the news or the diagnosis. And so what would be maybe one or two things that every caregiver should know?
I think that the message of getting educating everybody that supportive care, what it means, and that it really exists, and that you merit it. Everybody merits to have this kind of care, and it's out there. And that just, if we could get people to understand that they don't have to be alone. This is not an isolating diagnosis. People are living better with cancer, but we need the caregivers to take care of themselves so everybody is living better with cancer. So
Yeah.
that's probably the one wish that I would like to make sure that we get that message out, what supportive care is, and to make sure people know that it is out there and they should ask for it.
Yeah. Oh, that is such great advice. And not being afraid to ask for it too, or right from the beginning of, as you're talking about treatments, also just start the conversation. What other supportive care is available to my loved one, to our family? And so, but if you're already into the journey, it's still not too late to talk about supportive care and to ask for those resources. So I think that's probably also important to iterate too.
And also to say clearly that we're talking about the support services. We are not talking about palliative care. Palliative
Mm,
care is one piece of supportive care, just like all the other pieces are. Not every patient needs it. Actually, most patients don't. So we're talking. I don't want people to think that that's what we're talking about, because we're not.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction because while palliative care is a wonderful service, not everybody needs that through their care or their cancer journey. Some might at some point. And so I think that is a really great call out, Sheri, that palliative care might be one of the types of supportive care service, but there are other components too. And I remember you mentioned towards the beginning that it can be everything from those mental health services to nutrition support, transportation, which we know for so many might be a challenge, depending on where you live, urban versus rural, or just certain individuals might just have more needs in that area. So expressing what the needs are to your healthcare team and just seeing what supportive care services there are can be really helpful.
It's a critical piece.
Yeah. Well, Sheri, can you share a little bit more with our listeners about how they can continue to follow the work of your foundation and stay connected with you all?
Sure. The foundation started a coalition that has called Together for Supportive Care, which is which you can go to online, which is a group of people who have come together, corporate America, policymakers, um, uh, payers, insurance, big cancer centers, just everybody who's involved in the wraparound services of supportive care and supportive care have come together for the first time ever to try and figure out how to make this a national right, to figure out how to get our insurance companies to pay for it. And in fact, insurance companies are paying for some of these services now, so people need to know that part as well. So following us on there has a lot of information. The Biller Family Foundation also website is a good place to go. You can find different links to different pieces of what we discussed there anytime.
That's wonderful. And we'll be sure to include those links in the show notes as well. And I think that, seeing that coalition come together is really encouraging to, get all of the major players in one spot, talking about supportive care, working together so that, we can increase knowledge amongst caregivers, but also access to these really necessary services to support, again, not only the patient, but the caregivers as well.
And then the only other one thing I wanted to mention is
please.
for people to think about their communities, the communities they live in, because the communities of color have challenges that you haven't even discussed here. There's so many fear of government, fear of doctors, just other kinds of fears that come in. And it's just so anybody who can help anybody or knows anyone who needs help to keep that in the back of their mind as well.
That's a great point to bring up, Sheri. Yes, we know that various cultures and backgrounds also impact caregiving across, the lifespan in various types of caregiving, and there can be some barriers there. So again, it's great that coalition is convening to address some of these really important issues around supportive care, caregiving. And I'm just grateful that we got to talk today, Sheri. And as we wrap up our conversation, do you have any, final words of encouragement? Maybe for those caregivers who are feeling like, okay, I just have to make it through today, one day at a time. I'm sure that they would love some encouragement from you.
I always tell everybody to try and be gentle with yourself. This was never meant to be something that you are to do alone. Embrace your friends, your neighbors, your community. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People around you are always willing to give a helping hand.
That is a great piece of advice. And sometimes people want to help, but they just don't know how. So having some ideas as to how people can help you kind of in your back pocket, ready to go. So when somebody does ask, well, how can I help? You can say, oh, I'm so glad you asked. I could use help with XYZ. That can be very helpful. So Sheri, thank you so much for that final thought on reaching out for help and support. And thank you so much for the work that you and Les and the Biller Foundation do to support families and to advocate for supportive care. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
A deep and heartfelt thank you to Sheri Biller for sharing not only her expertise, but also her compassion and advocacy for caregivers navigating the cancer journey. Her words remind us that even in the most difficult times, support, dignity, and connection are possible. To our listeners who are caregiving for a loved one with cancer, please know your role is incredibly important and you don't have to walk it alone. Whether you find strength in a resource center, a trusted friend, or a moment of stillness in your day, you matter too. If today's episode brought comfort and clarity, I encourage you to subscribe, share it with someone who might need it, and leave a review so we can continue to reach and support more caregivers like you. You can always reach me at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. You can also follow us on social at Homeinstead Inc. for updates and caregiving tips. Thank you for listening, and please remember to take good care of yourself while you care for others. Caregiver Chats is brought to you by Homeinstead. If you're looking for in-home care to support you on your caregiving journey, please visit homeinstead.com to learn more.